Back here on HQ Spotlight, we have a new NFL season upon us. We cannot wait, and we're wondering who will be the contenders. What about the Chiefs after Patrick Mahomes gets healthy? The Rams, once they added Myles Garrett to that defense, Sam Darnold, and the Seahawks looking to run things back. And is this finally, potentially, the year for the Bills to get over the hump, get to a Super Bowl with Joe Brady now as the head coach? We're going to get into it and talk about our NFL tiers list. So Tyler Sullivan has made a list. Tiers, we're talking contenders, maybe guys in the playoff mix, all the things. So Tyler, great to see you. And we're going to start with the contenders. That list: the Rams, the Bills, the Seahawks, Ravens, Patriots, Eagles, Broncos. We see it listed out here. Want to focus in on the Eagles, Tyler, because depending who you ask, some folks might say, hey, this is a team with a head coach that's on the hot seat. So if that conversation is happening out there, but you still have them on a contender list, what is giving you confidence in this team to be a Super Bowl contender?
And Jacqueline, I think that's fair, right? I think the Philadelphia Eagles are one of the teams that have the most variance this season. Because it's in Philadelphia, there's always going to be a head coach on the hot seat. It feels like that fan base is rearing to put their head coach on a hot seat no matter who it is. But I also think that we're kind of off the scent a little bit of the Philadelphia Eagles. And rightfully so. We see what the Los Angeles Rams did this offseason. It's hard not to look at them as the favorite, not only in the NFC, but in the entire Super Bowl odds. But the Philadelphia Eagles, to me, are still a defense to be reckoned with, specifically in that secondary. When you have Quinyon Mitchell, when you have Cooper DeJean, this team in this secondary, it is going to be extremely difficult to throw against. As you can see here, what they were able to do last season, first in the NFL in passing touchdowns allowed, first in the NFL in fewest completion percentages allowed. They really are a defense to be feared, and when you account for what they can do on the interior of that defensive line with Jalen Carter, who got a massive extension this offseason, I think the defense is going to be the strength of this team. But at the same time, everyone's going to look at that offense. And what does Jalen Hurts do, and what do the Philadelphia Eagles do now without a guy like A.J. Brown, who they traded this offseason? Devontae Smith moves into the number one wide receiver role. Mekhi Lemon, who they drafted in the first round, takes on a complementary role, maybe the role that Smith had last season. But what I'm confident in, and I think that what gives me the most bullishness on the Philadelphia Eagles, is I think this offensive line is going to be healthy with Lane Johnson coming back, and I think that that's only going to help a guy like Saquon Barkley, where, yes, the numbers went down from his unbelievable season in 2024, but it's still an elite running back in the NFL. And if you tell me that the offensive line gets better and they get healthy, I think we're going to see a little bit more of the Saquon Barkley of 2024 compared to 2025. And if all of that comes together, that to me says they have a Super Bowl ceiling.
Okay, so maybe I should draft him a little bit higher in fantasy than I was planning on. We'll see. Let's go to the AFC side of things in terms of contenders, right? Because you got the Ravens, the Bills, Patriots, the Broncos. I'm curious on the AFC side of things, out of all the teams that you have in this contenders tier, how do you think it plays out? Because it's so interesting, right? Like, we don't know with Lamar Jackson, right, and this new head coach. Is it finally the year for the Bills with Joe Brady, the Broncos? Like, there's all this conversation about Bo Nix. He's a very polarizing quarterback. And then with the Patriots as well, as you know, some folks are saying, like, oh, their schedule was so easy. That's the only reason why they got to the Super Bowl. With all of that outside noise, who do you think the AFC representative, or who has the best shot at being that out of all these contenders here in this list?
Well, what I think is really interesting, you listed a few teams there, and all of them have a new piece coming in. And that's always going to be the case, right? No team really stays stagnant throughout an offseason. There's always some notable additions. And you could go through the list. I think Jalen Waddle is going to be a massive addition for the Denver Broncos this season. That number 2 option, that 1B, 1A, whatever you want to call him, opposite of Courtland Sutton, helped that take that team to a new level, provided that Bo Nix stays healthy. I mean, that team probably should have been the representative a season ago had Bo Nix not went down in that game against Buffalo. I referenced Buffalo. You have DJ Moore coming in. That team has been starved for a number 1 wide receiver since losing Stephon Diggs. They now get that in DJ Moore. Maybe that helps Josh Allen take a leap forward. The New England Patriots get A.J. Brown. Like, there's a lot of newness. But to me, I think the biggest newness is Jesse Minter going to the Baltimore Ravens. Almost similar to the Mike Vrabel injection in New England won a season ago. New voice and really a defensive-minded head coach. We know the issues that the Ravens had last season on the defensive side of the ball, tied for the third fewest sacks in the NFL. I think Minter comes in and really helps take this defense to a new level, along with Trey Hendrickson coming in free agency from the Cincinnati Bengals. I just really think that this team is poised because of what they have on the offensive side of the ball. Lamar Jackson, provided he stays healthy. Zay Flowers, who they just extended. Derrick Henry, who's the ageless wonder in the NFL, still doing it at his age. Even Mark Andrews, I think, is primed for a bounce back. There are pieces here to that offense. Jacoby Lane, a rookie wide receiver, another one. They are capable of doing and making damage in the AFC, and the defense had been their problem a year ago. I think Minter fixes that, especially with guys, superstars like Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks at safety.
Okay, let's go from contenders to fringe contenders. That's the next tier that we're talking about here. The Chiefs are in it, the Niners, Chargers, Bengals, Jags, Texans, Lions, Packers, Bears, and Cowboys. Oh my, here we go. This is the whole list. Want to focus in on the Cowboys here because we're hearing and seeing, obviously, how much they're putting in on the defensive side of the ball in the offseason, in the draft, all of that. But what makes you think that once they get to the postseason, that the outcome will be different than what we've seen in the past recently? I think back to those 3 straight seasons where they went 12-5 under Mike McCarthy and still could not get it done and get to a Super Bowl. How different are the vibes here for you for the Cowboys?
Well, that's the elephant in the room, right? Once they get into the postseason, can they actually do something with it? I think at this point, let's focus on getting Dallas back into the postseason, because last season, they have an offense ready to contend for a Super Bowl, honestly. That's how good Dak Prescott, George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Javonte Williams, they just have an offense that is prolific. And the only reason they were kind of stymied last season was because of that defense. And it was historically bad. You talk about last in the NFL in points per game allowed, in the 30s. You talk about last in the NFL in passing yards per game allowed, last in the NFL on third down. That was the issue for the Dallas Cowboys a season ago, and you referenced it. They have spent a lot of capital to try to fix the defensive side of the ball. They had 2 first-round picks. They used them both on the defensive side of the ball with Caleb Downs and Malachi Lawrence. You look at Quinnen Williams, even going back to last season, who they acquired at the trade deadline, and you have D. Winters, who's now going to be solidified as your middle linebacker, Rashawn Gary, a veteran piece, and most recently Von Miller. And so I do think that, yes, a lot of these things need to come together to make it work, but I think that what they have done so far is going to take them out of the basement. It doesn't necessarily need to be a top 10 defense in the NFL for them to be respectable in the regular season and potentially make some noise in the playoffs. You kind of just need to be baseline average because of what you have on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't underscore the bringing in Von Miller recently. It seems like wherever he goes, teams are making deep playoff runs, potentially rivaling for a Super Bowl. He could come in and not necessarily be the Von Miller of old. No one's expecting that. But can you come in situationally on third down, an area, like I mentioned, that they really struggled last season? Can you pressure the quarterback in those critical moments? I think he can. I think that translates to a playoff run.
Okay, we'll see what happens with the Cowboys. Also in this tier list is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And obviously when chatting with Pete Prisco on this desk, he always talks about how there was a sense in the building that if they beat the Bills in that wild card round, there was a feeling inside the building that they would have been the AFC representative in the Super Bowl and gone all the way. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. We could talk about it all the time. But Tyler, what is your confidence, or what's fueling your confidence, rather, in this Jags team to be a fringe contender in year 2 under Liam Cohen?
Well, it's that stretch run down the stretch, Jacqueline. You know this better than anybody. I mean, they were absolutely lights out on both sides of the ball. This wasn't just Trevor Lawrence going nuclear, which he did, led the NFL in touchdowns over the final 8 games of the season. But this defense was playing extremely well also. So I look at them and say, I think we're putting them a little bit under the radar. I know that New England really got a lot of pump. Chicago got a lot of pump in terms of these young quarterbacks realigning with new head coaches. I think Liam Cohen going with Trevor Lawrence, it did feel like he was unlocked down the stretch. You look at all the wide receivers that they have, bringing in Jacoby Myers at the deadline, Parker Washington emerging. If Brian Thomas Jr. looks anything like he did as a rookie, you are looking at one of the best wide receiver rooms in the NFL. And I didn't even mention Travis Hunter potentially slotting in there, going back and forth from corner to wide receiver. I think Bashal Tutin out of the backfield taking on a greater workload. It has a really promising upside. And that defensive side of the ball, they were tremendous against the run last season, really had an eye for creating takeaways. If all of that stuff translates and the offense continues to be as hot as we saw it towards the tail end of last season, the Jags not only they won't surprise me, I think that they will be a deep playoff run team.
Yeah, and Vegas counting them out too. They're not even the favorites to win the division, but that is what we like, Tyler. We just want to fly under the radar. So off to the next tier, we had Super Bowl contenders, fringe contenders, and now we're talking about in the playoff mixed teams. So we're listing them out here: the Steelers, the Bucks, Vikings, Commanders, Colts, Giants, Saints, Panthers, a whole group here. So Tyler, of these teams, who do you think is most primed to potentially make a deep playoff run, or just even a little bit of a run? We're looking at the teams that we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple here that really catch my eye, and it's kind of for the same reason. The Minnesota Vikings and the Washington Commanders. Obviously, we saw the Washington Commanders in year one of Jaden Daniels make it all the way to an NFC championship, and if all of a sudden he is healthy throughout an entire season, Jaden Daniels has showed us he is one of the more talented young quarterbacks that we have in the NFL. He has Terry McLaurin. He now has Stephon Diggs. I think Chika Okonkwo, the tight end who they signed in free agency, is super underrated signing. Rashad White out of the backfield. Like, there's a lot of pieces for this offense to really cater around Jaden Daniels. The defense will be a big question. We'll see what Sonny Styles does in his rookie season. And then when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, I've been bullish on them in terms of everything around the quarterback. I love Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, the weapons they have on the offensive side of the ball with Kevin O'Connell pulling the strings, Brian Flores on the defensive side of the ball. I just have questions about the quarterback. And if Kyler Murray is Sam Darnold 2.0, well, then you're talking about a team when they had Sam Darnold, was rivaling for the #1 seed in the conference in 2024, going into week 18, possibly winning the division against the Detroit Lions. Things fell off, but it showed you they were just a quarterback away, and no one is denying the talent of Kyler Murray. He is one of the bigger dual threat quarterbacks that we have in the NFL. The durability has been a concern over the last few years, including last year in his final year in Arizona. But if this player hits, if he reaches the ceiling of what the Vikings hope Kyler Murray can be, you are talking about a team that possibly could flip the division around and mess around and really stack up some win totals.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Kyler can parlay that one-year deal into something longer in Minnesota. I want to talk about another team in this tier list here, in the playoff mix list, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because it's been a very interesting offseason. Todd Bowles, obviously, also in that hot seat conversation. You got a lot of star players that want to get paid, including the quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who was kind of betting on himself with no new contract. So when there's a lot of these different variables out there, how confident are you that Tampa Bay can maybe move past all of that and all the outside drama that we've seen surrounding camp and really, take over the NFC South once again and beyond that?
Well, take over the NFC South is a very loose term. It's pretty easy to grasp nowadays, going under 500 and still winning that division.
They didn't do it last season.
That's true, and it's very true. And it's very similar to what we were talking about with the Philadelphia Eagles, right? One of the teams that has a lot of variance, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because it does feel like they are kind of standing on the edge of a cliff, not knowing what's going to happen, because you referenced it. Baker Mayfield playing in the final year of his deal. He's looking for a contract. Vita Vea looking for a new contract, has a trade request out there. Go back to this offseason. Levante David goes away. Mike Evans goes away. It feels like the old guard is kind of going out, and we don't really know what the future is going to behold. Todd Bowles, another one. Like, is he going to be fired? He's probably the head coach with the hottest seat going into this season. It feels like this team is teetering on a potential rebuild. So, sure, there's a possibility where that pressure creates a diamond, and you're able to win that division yet again, get back atop the NFC South. Baker looks potentially like he did more so in those first 6 games of the year as opposed to the final 11 games of the year when he was also battling injury. But there's also the chance where that pressure maybe has this team combust and it's not a promising season. So I think they can go a couple of different directions here. It just depends on how they deal with that pressure of this truly being a make or break deal, not just for one player, but for the entire organization.
Okay, so we finally reached the final tier, Tyler, and that is the maybe next year tier, which is a little depressing if we're already, writing off your team for next season and it's August and the season hasn't even officially started just yet. We have the Titans, the Falcons, Raiders, Jets, Browns, Cardinals, and the Dolphins. So I'm curious, Tyler, out of all of these teams, who do you expect to make the biggest leap if we are already pushing it ahead to next year?
Well, I think if you have to look at this optimistically, it would be the Las Vegas Raiders, right? Because what is something that all of these quarterbacks are all of these teams are looking for? I spoiled it. They're looking for a quarterback. And Fernando Mendoza at least gives the Las Vegas Raiders hope for tomorrow. It might not be in 2026 where they are contending for a division, contending for a playoff push, but he is someone who they can look to and say, okay, you might be the savior in 2027, 2028, whatever that may be. We'll see when he eventually becomes the starter in Sin City. It feels like Kirk Cousins' his job to lose, at least for week one. But so far, what we've seen from Fernando Mendoza, I don't know how you cannot be excited for what's to come. Obviously, coming off of his historic collegiate season at Indiana, winning that national championship, he has looked the part so far. And even in that brief preseason showing, he started to show flashes of why he was the #1 overall pick. You pair Fernando Mendoza with a revamped offensive line with Tyler Linderbaum at center, Ashton Genty in the backfield, Brock Bowers. Like, there are pieces to really get excited about for this offense to take a leap. I don't think it's going to be in year one, but if you tell me in 2027, after Fernando Mendoza has a handful of starts under his belt, the Raiders maybe have another first-round pick talent coming in, who knows what happens in free agency, it wouldn't surprise me if Clint Kubiak and this team were fighting for playoff positioning in 2027.
So to your point, there's really two teams, like two of these are not like the others in terms of quarterbacks of the future, because it's the Raiders and then the Titans obviously seemingly have their quarterback of the future in Cam Ward. Now, I am curious, out of all of the teams that are out there, whether it's maybe Tua with the Falcons or if we have Geno with the Jets, or Shador with the Browns, Malik Willis with the Dolphins, is there a situation where you feel like one of these bridge gap guys could maybe turn out the most success of those quarterbacks in that category? Who are you most confident in to maybe get these teams to like 7, 8 wins and maybe surprise us a little bit?
Well, confidence, again, I'll use loosely a little bit, but it might be Tua Tagovailoa because of what he has around him. That is where I think you could maybe look at it a little bit more confidently, right? Because you have Bijan Robinson, because you have Drake London, even Kyle Pitts, who they all extended this offseason, there is a strong complement of skill position players around the quarterback that might be able to make the offense hum. Now, we have to see if he ultimately wins the starting job. Technically, he's still competing with Michael Penix Jr. for the week 1 gig, even though Michael Penix Jr. isn't cleared for 11 on 11s. But everything that we have heard from the Falcons this offseason, just kind of being around the team during the annual meetings and seeing how they've been operating, it feels like this is Tua's job to lose. And he could be that quarterback, that veteran quarterback that we've seen time and time again have a career resurgence, whether it's Daniel Jones, Geno Smith. We've seen it across the league. It feels like even a little bit more so over the last handful of years. There's the possibility that Tua could be that guy, and if he is, we just talked about it, a winnable division in the NFC South. So that to me might be the team to keep an eye on. It's a winnable division. I think Tua has at least shown in the past that he can be a capable quarterback. Now that he has all of these weapons at his disposal, I'll be curious to see if maybe that's the team that surprises some and finds themselves weirdly in the playoffs if everything breaks right in that division.
Yeah, we'll see which lefty comes out on top, whether it's Michael Penix or Tua in Atlanta. Tyler, we certainly appreciate it. Going through his NFL tiers list from Super Bowl contenders all the way to the maybe next year tier. We have week 2 of the preseason kicking off. The Raiders and the Texans getting the action started at 8 Eastern. Then we have the Chargers and the Niners, Steelers and the Jets, and the Browns and the Bills Saturday at 1 Eastern.